Fallout New Vegas doesn't really care about the fallout from the end of the world, because it's a lot more interested in what comes next. Unlike its contemporaries then, it's not so much post-apocalyptic as it is post-post-apocalyptic. The story, the colourful characters, and the many locations in the world itself are all deeply rooted in a uniquely drawn socio-political landscape that is more akin to that of the Wild West frontier than that of a dystopian hellscape where every day is a fight for survival. You may have played earlier Fallouts trading scraps for dirty water, but in New Vegas you'll trade motel souvenirs for gourmet cannibalism and casino chips. For all of its quirks, there are countless well-documented specific video game things that New Vegas does exceptionally well, and there are 100 different reasons that a fan could offer to explain why this particular Fallout game is their favourite. But as someone who has spent a lot of time exploring and thinking about the Mojave Wasteland, trying to define the indefinable quality of this world that sets it apart from the rest of the video game post-apocalypses, I think I've finally come to understand a big part of why I think New Vegas is one of the greatest games of all time. Because surviving the wasteland is just an appetizer, while exploring and shaping a new world is the main course.
Is it really so hard not to engage in cannibalism? My goodness.
With a title like Fallout, it's not surprising that the first Fallout game was largely focused on the aftermath of the Great War, offering a brutal wasteland full of mutants and raiders and buoyed only by scattered, derelict settlements that seem insignificant compared with the world that came before. Fallout 2, however, advanced this wasteland a great deal. Settlements grew into cities, while the Enclave and the NCR represented the early stages of a growing civilization, but still the game's world mostly felt pretty rough. And then in Fallout 3, this progress arguably took a step backwards. The capital wasteland is, frankly, a complete mess, and the quest for clean water at the heart of the game feels like a very early step in rebuilding this world, all things considered. But then there was Fallout New Vegas and the Mojave Wasteland, where after centuries of ruin and slow rebuilding, players were offered the chance to experience the next step after the post-apocalypse. When the game begins and the player is first thrown out into this world, they don't find themselves emerging into an uncivilized wasteland. Instead, they're wandering through a quaint little town full of friendly faces and frontiersman attitudes. The world did briefly end here some 200 years ago, but these folks don't seem like they're fixated on the past. They're just living and growing in a place with a complicated, tragic, and self-evident history. The Great War and the ensuing fallout feels like more of a distant memory in New Vegas, and though there's still plenty of danger, life feels a lot more stable here. And that makes the Mojave so much more interesting to explore because it gives the world building room to expand on the legacy of the first two Fallout games, especially to build something new. Now, I should say that I definitely don't mean to suggest that New Vegas has zero post-apocalyptic elements, because obviously it does have a lot. The game was, after all, built in large part from existing components designed for Fallout 3, so its design and aesthetic is largely informed by the capital wastelands. Either way, it's very obvious that there was a more civilized world here before, and it's still common knowledge that there was a great war that obliterated much of the country. But it's just that everything in the game feels one step further removed from those facts. There are still empty ruins and copy-pasted post-apocalyptic landmarks, but the concentration of good new stuff far outweighs the sadly necessary filler. In Fallout 3, the vast majority of the locations you will explore in the open world feel like they fit into one of two categories. They're either pre-war ruins offering a little bit of environmental storytelling about the world that came before, or they're primitive settlements inhabited by fairly normal settlers and raiders. In New Vegas, though, the open world experience is very different and much less predictable, because a greater proportion of locations feel like they've been dramatically transformed from the ruins that once stood there, and they so regularly have unique, layered stories to tell. As much as I do enjoy exploring the remnants of pre-war civilization, my favorite things in Fallout have always been the places and situations that emerge from the chaotic aftermath. And Fallout New Vegas goes all in on that stuff. I'll never forget how excited I was to learn after approaching the Novak Motel and its giant dinosaur that instead of exploring a ruin, I was entering a functional motel with a strange cast of characters, a fully stocked gift shop, and a couple of hidden secrets. And then there was the time I approached the nearby RepCon test site, expecting to loot some cool guns and read a few terminal entries before unexpectedly finding myself playing through one of the most fun and brilliant side quests in the game. Wandering through the Mojave Wasteland, you'll find countless colorful characters living life in their own unique ways. They're not all cowering in rickety huts and dingy caves waiting for it all to blow over. Whether they're a member of one of the Wasteland's factions or not, they're pretty much all taking a stand and choosing a way of life. And the game's main quest ultimately becomes an opportunity for the player to choose what they think the best possible path forward is for this world. The major factions in the Mojave have all grown and organized to a point where they're on the cusp of capably supporting a large-scale society, but they have several different, historically informed ideas of how to approach this. And this open world definitely ain't big enough for all of them to coexist happily.
Don't do that, baby, not crucifixion. I could be up there for days with those twisted creeps laughing and pointing.
While most factions in other Fallout games, even when they appear organized and sophisticated, come off more like warring tribes, in New Vegas there's a real sense that you're dealing with socio-political issues that stem from more than just survival instincts. It's not about who gets to survive so much as it is who gets to be in charge. While factions like the Enclave seem to be defined more by their origins than their intentions, the groups in the Mojave almost all have a clear mission statement for their way of life. They feel like real organizations trying to achieve something. This wasteland is shockingly civilized across the board, and that even applies to the game's bad guys. Caesar's Legion are obviously the most evil bunch in the Wasteland, and there's significantly more interesting villains than vanilla raiders, not only because you can join up with them if you're that way inclined, but also because they have amusingly structured their entire way of life around a facsimile of the Roman Empire. They offer a slightly terrifying but also slightly ridiculous vision of a new future for the Wasteland that feels entirely appropriate against the glitzy backdrop of New Vegas. And on the other, more ethical side of the potential stratocratic regime coin are the NCR, who are your classic bureaucrats and military men. They represent a degree of order and civility, but they don't much emphasize the arts or leisure, or care about the more fun stuff like Mr. House and the families on the Vegas Strip do. From his cozy little pod in the Lucky 38 casino, Mr. House is attempting to oversee the rebirth of civilization, using the good old days as his blueprint and dreaming big for the future of humanity. Naturally, he's a bit mad and power-hungry and ruthless, but there's no doubting his capacity to deliver on his vision for the new world. And it's a pretty impressive vision too. When the player first enters the New Vegas Strip, either by battling through the cazadors or taking the long way round, they find themselves in the middle of what may well be the most sophisticated and densely populated settlement in the post-Great War USA. Marquees are illuminated, special services are offered, and the casinos seem to operate for all intents and purposes at full capacity and without compromise. Aside from some peeling paint and rusty bathroom fittings, the interiors of these hotel casinos are basically pristine too. There might be wastelanders far away struggling to survive, but in New Vegas they have plenty of time and resources to safely occupy their time drinking and gambling. But the most interesting thing about the Vegas Strip isn't, in my eyes, the scale or complexity of the city. It's the fact that it feels like a completely natural fit in the Mojave Wasteland. If you placed a settlement as big and as complex as the Vegas Strip in the middle of any of the other Fallout games' maps, I think it would feel incoherent. There is too much desolation and disorder around to possibly conceive of a thriving hub of commerce and leisure like New Vegas existing within their borders. But Freeside and the Strip feel appropriately situated here because life outside the walls is just as vibrant and all points towards this central hub. It seems a bit silly to even call the Mojave Wasteland a wasteland, because it's so full of life in motion. The world doesn't feel like it's ending, and it doesn't feel like it's starting over either. It feels like it's just about ramping up to a civilizational turning point, which frankly is a lot more exciting to be a part of. And almost everything in the game supports the atmosphere and tone of this new world. The music, far from the somber sounds of the ink spots and the slow atmospheric original scores in past games, is full of rousing western soundscapes and optimistic Rat Pack tunes. The side characters aren't reclusive wasteland oddballs as often as they are charismatic, well-socialized weirdos. The locations inside and outside of the Vegas city borders are full of color and life. The reason I think Fallout New Vegas is so brilliant, and the reason I think it's the favorite of so many other Fallout fans, is because it didn't just expand the wasteland, it advanced it. It built the story beyond the post-apocalypse and reconnected with the evolution of the first two Fallout games while giving the player a meaningful stake in this universe. Living in the shadow of New Vegas, Fallout 4 and Fallout 76, as good as they are in their own unique ways, both feel a bit like they're lacking something. With Fallout 4, it's clear that Bethesda sought to build a more vibrant and advanced post-apocalypse, and I've always personally enjoyed the way it frames the clashing intentions of its major factions. But for better or worse, I'd say that the vast majority of the game's world feels closer to Fallout 3's Wasteland than New Vegas's. And though there is a lot more life in Fallout 76's Appalachia now than there was at launch, the game still largely offers a wasteland full of remnants of the past rather than seeds for the future. Bethesda's Fallout games, like the original Fallout, feel like they're stories about surviving an unrelentingly dangerous wasteland while aiming to forge some kind of future amidst the chaos. But New Vegas is a game that asks you instead to find your place in a dynamic and complicated post-apocalyptic political landscape. where the prizes that are at stake in the main quest, control of the Strip and Hoover Dam, are more representations of civic power than they are the keys to survival for whichever group ultimately has them. The player gives a damn about Hoover Dam and the Platinum Chip because they represent the power to shape the story of the Wasteland, and ultimately decide which future is best for you and or the people of the Mojave. Fallout New Vegas isn't about the fallout at all. It's about the rebirth of civilization merely contextualized by the past. But what do you think it is that makes New Vegas so brilliant? Let me know in the comments, and please do like and subscribe if you'd like to hear me talk more games. Otherwise, I'll see you next time around.